today's situation is, yeah, they're thinking about riding a horse. B does not know how to ride a horse. B does not have experience, But it turns out that A does. A knows how to ride a horse. Now, B was not aware of that. So, B is going to ask A, who taught you how to ride a horse? And now, A is going to start today's conversation by answering the question saying, well, my parents taught me. I learned that skill of riding a horse. I learned it the eraser. I learned it from my parents. Sorry, don't like how it looks. I learned it from my parents when... Okay, so we're going to use the bridge when. Legend, Sophia, hello. I was young. Okay, so this is going to be the first sentence. And yes, right off the bat, we have a bridge, right? The when bridge. So of course, the first thing that you have to keep in mind when you have a bridge, yes, is the fact that you have to identify whether it's a reverse bridge or not. So when, is it a reverse bridge or not? Sophia, thank you. Exactly, yes. It is a reverse bridge. Therefore, we will have the order between the blue and pink sentence reversed. So we're going to start with the pink one. Of course, I'm talking about I. No, is, am, was, were. Well, actually, we're going to inflect the adjective young into its past tense form. So depending on perspective, you can say that we will have the adjective was young. Okay, so it means that yes, in order to come up with the past tense form of young, was young, it means that I have to take the predicative adjective young and give it two endings, right? The past tense ending and the when ending. Why is that? Because, yes, a bridge is never an independent component. It has to become a part of the word right in front of it as its ending. So we're going to take the adjective young, we're going to give it the past tense ending and the when ending. Okay, so let's place the display form of the adjective young, 어리다, 어리다. This is not the only way you can say young, but it is a version that fits the context right now. 어리다, 어리다. Okay. So, of course, there's another version, 젊다, that you would see quite often, but 젊다 is only used to a person who already reached adulthood and they are relatively young. Okay, so let's say when A learned how to ride a horse from his parents, A was, let's say, 11. So I don't think I would use 젊다. I'm going to use 어리다 in this case. Okay, so I don't want its display form, do I? So let's go to inflection route number 1 to first give it the past tense ending. Okay. So the past tense ending, yes, it belongs to inflection route number 1. So let's apply the rules of inflection route number 1, the 서요 ending. Okay, so what are the rules? The rules are, yes, if you have a display form that ends with the E vowel, once ta is removed, we will apply a 3-step formula, right? Remove ta, and then, yes, change the E vowel into 여, and then let's go to the ending. 드디어, you are ready to attach the ending. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Yes, change E into 여, attach the double S and 어요 as the past tense ending. So now what do we have? We have 어렸어요. 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 So the past tense ending of the adjective young, which is was young. However, I cannot go all the way to the end, right? Because I said we have to give it two endings. So we first gave it the past tense ending according to inflection route number 1, but now we have to give it the when ending according to inflection route number 2. So let's go to inflection route number 2. So what do we have? Yes, when you have an ending that has a double S somewhere, 어렸어요. Yep, that's where you stop. That's where you stop. That's where you see a sign that tells you, hey, you've done enough to indicate past tense. So if you want to use another ending at the same time, this is where you move on. Okay, so let's move on. Now, the el te ending, which is the equivalent of when, yes, belongs to inflection route number 2. And the rules are, if you have something that ends with S, once ta is removed, there was no ta to begin with, so we're going to skip over step number 1. Yes, we're going to skip over removing ta because there was no ta to remove in the first place. Step number 2, yes, place u as the irregular middle section, and then 드디어 you are ready to attach the ending. Okay, so let's do that. There was no ta. Let's place u as the irregular middle section, and then we can attach the ending. 어렸을 때. 어렸을 때. 어렸을 때. 어렸을 때. Okay, so now we have when was young. Okay, so you always have to be able to bounce around between inflection route number 1 and number 2 because you can't always expect to find yourself only in situations where you only have to use one ending at a time. A lot of times you will use 2 at the same time, maybe 3 or maybe even 4 sometimes. Okay, so now we finished the first sentence. Let's cross the 다리. Okay, so was young, and we're talking about 11, 어렸을 때. Okay, so now we are finishing the pink 문장, and now we're crossing the 다리. Okay, 어렸을 때, 어렸을 때, 어렸을 때. When was young. Okay, when I was young. And then now let's go to the blue sentence. Of course, I'm talking about I. Of course, I'm talking about it, the skill to ride a horse. And of course, I'm talking about my parents. And the word that I will use right now means parents at the same time. So the plural is already built in. Okay, so we're going to look at it as location. Although, what is traveling is not something tangible, still we're going to look at it as location. What do I mean by that? Something was with my parents and yes, it traveled all the way to me. It used to be where my parents were, but now it traveled all the way to me. What is that? Yes, the skill. So a skill set is not something tangible, but still you can think of it as something that traveled from one location to another. So we're still going to look at it as location. And then the verb learned. Okay, so now we have to know at least 3 versions when it comes to placing from with a word. Now, I'm just going to talk about the big 2 for now. The first one is to say 에서. Of course, we are excluding all the poetic versions. If we include poetic versions, there's more than 3. However, yes, we're going to exclude all the extremely poetic versions, which leaves us with 3. And out of the three, I'm going to talk about the big two right now. So, 에서 and 한테. Okay, so what was the difference? 에서 is when you're using from, and whatever from is modifying is not a living being. So, I came from my friend's house. My friend's house is not a living being. So, or I came from the living room, whatever. So the living room also, a living room is also not a living being. However, if you're using from to modify something that is a living being, then 한테. Okay, so right now, parents exactly are living beings. So I'm going to use 한테. And something that you have to be mindful of when it comes to pronunciation is, yes, 한테 now is attached behind the word. Therefore, yes, now the H is somewhere in the middle of a word, which means that it's going to be practically silent, right? So when I'm actually using it, yes, the H is always going to be practically silent. So I'm not going to say 부모님한테. I'm going to say 부모님한테, as if the H is not there at all. 부모님한테, from parents. And then, of course, learn, 배우다. The best way to say learn. So, of course, I don't want its display form once again. I want the actual form, past tense ending. So let's go to inflection route number 1. So this time, we're once again in inflection route number 1, but this time, what are the rules? Yes. This time, we have a display form that ends with U. So in this case, we also apply a 3-step formula accordingly, right? Remove 다, add an extra vowel all. So we remove 다, add an extra vowel all, form a double vowel that no longer sounds like U, but now sounds like 워. And then finally, you can attach the ending. 배웠어요. 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 Okay, so yes, now we have the actual form, past tense of learn, which is learned. Exactly, okay, 배웠어요. So now, let's actually place it in the 문장. Just move the location a little bit. Okay, so I'll just write the meaning here. Not enough space. Okay, so now we have the full 문장. 천천히 읽을게요. 어렸을 때 부모님한테 배웠어요. 어렸을 때 부모님한테 배웠어요. 어렸을 때 부모님한테 배웠어요. Okay, so B is asking, who taught you how to ride a horse? And A is going to say, well, I learned it from my parents when I was young. My parents taught me how to ride a horse when I was young, 11. Okay, does that make sense? If it does, 넘어갈까요? Okay. Now let's take a look into what B has to say. Once again, if I were to remind you of the context, I said, yes, A knows how to ride a horse, B does not. So B is going to say, once again, we're going to use a 다리, a bridge. Just like you, I also want to learn. Just like you, I also want to learn, but it is scary, as a way of saying I'm scared. Okay, I also want to learn, but it is scary. So now, this time we have a bridge. Yes, usually bridges will be reverse bridges. However, not all of them, right? But is a very typical example of just a regular bridge. So we're not going to have the order between the two sentences reversed, right? Exactly. So we're going to say the blue sentence first, bridge next, and then the pink sentence. Okay, so I also, this time, we're going to keep the subject I, right? Because it is core information. It has to house the particle also, in other words, as well, in other words, too. So not just you, I also. So, yes. In Korean, also, as well, in other words, too, is a particle, right? Something that has to be attached to a word that it modifies. Let's actually give it a cut. Well, no, sorry. 저도. Okay, so I also. 저도. 저도. And then, yes, let's go to want to learn. Now, once again, this time we have to take the verb learn, but now we have to give it two endings, right? We first have to give it the want to ending, and then we have to give it the but ending. Because, once again, yes, no bridge is an independent component. It has to be attached to the word right in front of it as its ending. So therefore, we are going to look at want to learn, but as, yes, the adjective. Now, some of you might say, did you just say adjective? It's a verb. No. Okay, now, in Korean, let's first place the display form of learn. We know what it looks like, right? 배우다. And then let's attach to it the want to ending. Now, the want to ending is a no route ending, right? So you don't have to go to inflection route number 1. You don't have to go to inflection route number 2 either. How convenient is that? So let's attach the no route ending, want to, 고 싶다, the display form of it. So we cannot use it yet. We're not ready to use it. It's still a display form. So all endings also have display forms, right? 저도 배우고 싶다. However, now, whenever you are attaching want to as an ending to any kind of a word, keep this in mind. Now you have an adjective. So in Korean, the moment you attach the 고 싶다 ending to anything that you're attaching it to, you have an adjective. Now, some of you could ask a fundamental question. Well, why do we have to be so much fixated on these grammatical terms? This part of speech. Is it a verb? Is it an adjective? Why does it matter so much? I know what it means. I know what it does. I know how to inflect it. Well, it matters because you could say, well, I know what it means. I know what it does. Do I really have to be so much focused on whether it's a verb or adjective? Well, that's when something opens the door and says, well then, how are you going to deal with me? Who's that guy who opened the door? Yes, inflection. Because the but ending, of course, there are so many ways of saying but. However, one of the most colloquial versions. Now, the but ending will be a shapeshifter. So this is where things get messy if you don't pay attention to whether it's a verb or adjective at all. Because the but ending is an irregular ending, it keeps on shapeshifting depending on whether it goes to a verb or adjective. This is where things get messy if you are lazy. Okay, so right now we are giving it to present tense adjective. If we were giving it to a verb, then it would have been a no route ending. 는데. It would have been. However, once again, I said, once you attach want to anything, now you have an adjective. So now you know how to inflect it. If it's going to present tense adjective, then it's ende, and it belongs to inflection route number 2. So this is why, yes, I know that trying to identify whether something is a verb, adjective, well, what is a relative pronoun, all these fancy grammatical terms. Yeah, sometimes they feel redundant and they feel like just a pain in the Yes, you know what I'm gonna say, right? In the but. But anyway, yes. However, sometimes you do have to meticulously understand the mechanism of grammar because, yeah, the annoying guy, right? Inflection. Inflection is always there, looking at you saying, well, if you're going to be lazy, how are you going to deal with me? So inflection is always, yeah, a pain in the, yes. Okay, so because it's ente, inflection route number 2, let's go to inflection route number 2. Oops. Okay, so what are the rules? What do we have? We have the display form of want to learn. 배우고 싶다. 배우고 싶다. 배우고 싶다. Okay, so because we have a display form and the ending that we're trying to give is ente, well, let's do that according to the rules of inflection route number 1. What are the rules? If you have something that ends with the P consonant, yes, apply the 3-step formula. Remove ta, place u as the irregular middle section, and then attach the ending. 배우고 싶은데, 배우고 싶은데, 배우고 싶은데. Okay, so now we have want to learn, but. Okay, so now let's place it in the 문장. Want to learn, and then, oops, sorry. Okay, now we're crossing the bridge. So I also want to learn, but 저도 배우고 싶은데. Now let's move on to the pink sentence. Okay, no it and no is, and we have the adjective scary. Okay, so let's place the display form of scary. 무섭다. 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 Now, do keep in mind that this is not scared. Now, calling this scared is a very lazy way of translating it. It is scary. So actually, when people are using this adjective, they're not saying I'm scared right now. They're saying it is scary right now. This situation that I am in, it's scary for me right now. Okay, now there is another word that can be used as scared, which is 두렵다. 두렵다. This can be scared. However, it's extremely poetic. Extremely poetic, so do not use it. Okay, now, I don't want its display form, do I? I want its actual form in present tense. So let's give it the yo ending, and of course that means we have to go to inflection route number 1. So we have the B situation. When we have the B situation, we have to once again divide the situation into verbs and adjectives, right? Because, yes, depending on what you have, you will approach inflecting it differently. And right now, yes, we have an adjective that ends with the B consonant. Okay, so for the most part, how are you going to inflect an adjective that ends with B within inflection route number 1? For the most part, outside of the typical 4 exceptions, you apply a 4-step formula, right? Remove ta, remove B, place 워 as the irregular middle section, and then attach the ending. Okay, because scary is not one of those 4 exceptions. So I am going to apply the conventional 4-step formula. And at the end, yes, the ending that I'm going to use is 요. So let's go through the steps one by one. Remove 다, remove the B, place 워 as the irregular middle section, and then attach the ending, right? So 무서워요, 무서워요, 무서워요. So now we have the actual form, present tense of scary, which is scary. Exactly. 무서워요. So now let's finish the sentence, the 문장. So now we have the full 문장. So I will read it slowly. 천천히 읽을게요. I also want to learn, but it is scary. 저도 배우고 싶은데 무서워요. 저도 배우고 싶은데 무서워요. 저도 배우고 싶은데 무서워요. Okay, I also want to learn, but it is scary riding a horse. Does that make sense? If it does, 넘어갈까요? Okay. 천천히 읽을게요. That's what I said. Using future tense version number 2. Okay, so let's move on. And let's go back to A's 문장. It's A's 차례, turn again. So A is going to say, well, I also... Well, you're saying that it's scary. The idea of getting on a galloping horse full speed, it's scary. Well, I understand because I also cried, actually. I told you that I was 11 when my parents first started teaching me how to ride a horse. I still vividly remember the first day. I also cried, actually, at first. So that is a way of saying, well, at first, I actually was scared just like you, and I cried. I vividly remember that day. Okay, so once again, we're going to keep the subject I because it's going to house the particle. And we have cried, the verb, the adverb actually, and yes, we're going to look at first as time. The first time I rode a horse, at first. So, I'm sorry. Let's, of course, place I also at first. First. 저, I, and then let's give it the particle. Also, in other words, as well, in other words, too. I also, 저도, and then, yes. Oops, where's the green one? Okay, so when you're saying at first, let's first place 처음, first. Of course, this is not the only way of saying first, but within the given context, this is the version that would fit. Okay, 처음, when you're saying something like at first. 처음, first. And then, when you have time words, let's just touch on this very briefly. Of course, there are more details, but it's not the main subject today, so I will scratch the surface a little bit. When you have a time word, usually you could have a preposition in, on, at. Of course, in English, that is. Like in winter, on Christmas, at 3 o'clock. So whenever you're talking about some kind of duration or period of time, you could be using a preposition such as in, on, at. Now, when you have in, on, at in English, yes, it means that also you need 에 in Korean. But there are time words, words that indicate duration or period of time that are exceptions, right? Even in English, there are some time words that don't even allow you to place in, on, at in front of them, such as today. We're not going to say, I arrived on today, right? Or yesterday. Hey, I saw you on yesterday, right? Or every day. I come here in every day. I'm not going to do that, right? So, Yes, just like in English, also in Korean, there are time words that don't even allow you to place any kind of a post position. 에, which is the equivalent of in, on, at. So the list of those exceptions happen to look the same in both languages. How convenient is that? If you have a time word that you won't place in, on, at with, then don't do it in Korean. Once again, the list of those exceptions happen to look exactly the same in both languages. How convenient. However, for now, I'm barely scratching the surface, but for now, I'll just put it this way. There is a variable that you have to keep in mind. Usually it looks the same. However, the variable is, for now, last, this, and next. In English, when you place last, this, and next in front of a time word, they substitute in, on, at, right? You're not going to say, well, I will go in next winter. You can just say, I'll go next winter. Or, I came last year. You don't have to say, you're not going to say, I came in last year, right? That's the one variable for now. In Korean, even if you do have last, this, or next, you still need in, on, at. So actually, you are saying, I arrived in last week, or I came to Korea in last year. I will go to, let's say, Europe in next year. Okay, so that's the only variable for now. Okay, but anyway, right now, we do have in, on, at, so let's place 에. 저도 처음에, and then 사실, actually, and then let's place the display form of cry, 울다, but of course I don't want its display form, right? 울다. So let's give it the actual form, past tense ending, and that means, yeah, another visit to inflection route number 1. So, let's take a look at the ending that we're going to use, because we are in a very unique and annoying situation, aren't we? We are in a very unique and annoying situation. The ending that we're going to use, 써요. Okay, now, why am I emphasizing this? Usually, I just go through the process of inflecting it. Because we have the L situation, right? Now, the L situation is very unique because we have to keep in mind something that has nothing to do with one particular inflection route, right? It applies to all sorts of situations where you're inflecting. Are you using an ending that belongs to route number 1, 2, or is it a no route ending? Does it belong to 3, 4, or 5 that we did not talk about yet? Does not matter. Okay, so what is this thing that we have to be mindful of when we have something that ends with L once ta is removed that applies to all routes? Well, there are 3 cases where, in large, where the L has to be dropped, right? Once again, this has nothing to do with inflection route number 1, 2 in particular. It applies to all situations where you are inflecting. So in 3 situations, of course, you're going to remove the ta, but you have to remove the L as well. 3 situations for now. What are them? So, do you remember the 3? Number 1 is when you're using an ending that starts with N. Right? N. Anything that starts with N. So that's why, let's say we're going to use a no route ending. 는거, the gerund ending. Crying. Now, it does not matter the route does not matter. If I'm going to attach the no route ending 는거, the gerund ending to cry, the L has to go. I'm sorry, you're not invited to the party. 우는 거, 우는 거, 우는 거. So crying. So that's number 1, right? When the ending that you're using starts with an N. What's number 2? When the ending that you're using starts with an L, but only when that L is a 받침, an ending consonant, right? Okay, so it's not always when the ending that you're using starts with this consonant, only when it's a 받침. Well, what's a typical example? We have been using future tense ending, the future tense ending all the time, right? Yeah, this would be a typical example. It starts with L, and that L is a 받침, an ending consonant that is underneath everything else. So yeah, it just looks like the L did not go because it was replaced with another one, but it actually was removed. It's just that a new one came in and took its spot. 울 거예요, will cry. So this is number 2. When, yes, the ending that you're using ends with an L, starts with an L, but when that L is a 받침. And number 3 is, now there are a couple of ways of speaking in Korean, right? There's 존댓말, honorifics, and 반말, non-honorifics, also known as formal and informal or formal casual Korean. But I'm sorry for Sparkles who have heard me say this 6,000 times by now, but I'll say it just one more, well, not just one more time. I can't make a promise that, that's not a promise. I'm sure that I will say it again. For now, for today. Now, calling this formal Korean and this informal / casual Korean, I would say it's a logical error. It's not just lazy, I would say it's just an outright error. Because, why is that? I can be formal, informal, casual, impish, mischievous, disrespectful, sarcastic, aggressive, angry. I can do anything with 존댓말 I want. The same goes for 반말. I can be formal, I can be informal, I can be anything I want using 반말. So, then, why was that narrative spread? I believe that there are 2 reasons. Number 1, laziness. Well, I shouldn't call it laziness because there's also limitations that come from format, right? So, this is what does happen. First of all, I have to make a video within 90 seconds. That's popular, right? Short forms. So, I can't really dive deep into long, technical, and deep explanations to begin with. And number 2, if I say anything that goes against the conventional narrative that was already spread, then what happens? I get a lot of questions, right? The questions are, what do you mean it's not formal and casual Korean? That's what I saw in other videos. Can you please elaborate? Once again, I can't elaborate. I said I only have 90 seconds. How am I going to elaborate? If I had 9 minutes or 10 minutes, I would have just explained it in the first video. Okay, so if I don't want those questions to be asked because I don't have the time or I'm not ready to, I'm not equipped to elaborate on it, then I'm just going to go with the original narrative that's already out there. I'm not going to go against it, even though I know inside my mind that I'm not sure if this is the best way to teach it, but it's already out there. I don't want to be bombarded with questions that I cannot answer. Okay, so that's reason number 1, limitations that come from format. Number 2 is there's something that is above honorific. Well, not above in the sense that it's better. But yes, 존댓말, we call it honorifics, right? There's something called extreme honorifics. Now, maybe somewhere along the way, a huge part of explaining the difference between the 3 was omitted, maybe for convenience, maybe because of a language barrier, maybe just because for convenience, whatever the reason may be. Now, this is what people mean by formal Korean. Now, this automatically makes you formal. So, there's no line between honorifics and non-honorifics, but there is between these 2 and this extreme honorifics, yes, is exactly what people mean by formal Korean. Okay, and once again, because of limitation of format, for example, if I'm not ready to, if I'm not equipped to go into a long technical breakdown on the difference between extreme honorifics and honorifics, what am I going to do? I'm not even going to mention it. Okay, or even if I do mention it, yes, I'm not really going to go into the deep details. So, The reason why I'm mentioning extreme honorifics right now, yes, we also did not get to extreme honorifics just yet, because extreme honorifics is not something that you definitely need. Honorifics makes you polite enough in all situations. So that's why learning honorifics first is the most efficient way. And then you expand to non-honorifics and extreme honorifics. Then you add some more tools into your toolbox. And of course, if you get very good at honorifics, of course, yes, having that understanding translate to other formats of Korean is not going to be as difficult as learning a whole new language again. So once we get to a very high level with honorifics, yes, we're actually going to learn how to switch mode into non-honorifics and extreme honorifics. There are some technical differences between the three, and one of them sometimes is how you inflect words. So there are endings that start with S that are only used in extreme honorifics. So that's what I mean by situation number 3, where the L has to be dropped, is when you're using an ending that starts with S, but only when that ending is something built for extreme honorifics. So we did not use them yet. So for example, does that mean that the L has to go if I'm using 서? No, because 서 is an ending that can be used in honorifics and non-honorifics. It's not an ending that is only built for extreme honorifics. When we get to extreme honorifics, we will start seeing some endings that are only solely built for extreme honorifics. Okay, so we'll get there, but for now, this is what you have to keep in mind. If I'm using an ending that starts with N or L as a 받침, or if I'm using an ending that is built for extreme honorifics and that starts with S, that's when I drop the L. Doesn't matter. Inflection route number 1, 2, no route inflection, 3, 4, 5, doesn't matter. Okay. However, right now, we are not in one of these 3 situations. We're using an ending that starts with S, but once again, the past tense ending is not an ending that is only used in extreme honorifics. Of course not. We have been using it, I don't know, 700 times by now. So of course not. That's why, even though it starts with an S, it will not be dropped. The L, that is. So we're going to apply a 3-step formula. If we're not in one of those 3 situations, the rules are remove 다, place a or all as the irregular middle section, and then 드디어 you can attach the ending. So yes, exactly. all, and then attach the ending. 울었어요. 울었어요. So now we have the actual form, past tense of cry, which is cried. Exactly. Let's place it in the 문장. So all together, now we can say 저도 처음에 사실 울었어요. 저도 처음에 사실 울었어요. 저도 처음에 사실 울었어요. I also cried actually at first. Does that make sense? If it does, 넘어갈까요? Okay, so let's move on. Now let's take a look into what the full 대화 looks like if there is no pause in between, how it flows. Okay, so at first, 처음에 천천히 읽을게요. 처음에는. So you can notice that I used at first 처음에 and then what did I do? I attached a different particle, right? 처음에는 what does that tell you? It tells you that at first I'll read it slowly, but the next time, it's going to be different, right? I'm going to read it a little bit faster. So 처음에는 천천히 읽을게요. 어렸을 때 부모님한테 배웠어요. 저도 배우고 싶은데 무서워요. 저도 처음에 사실 울었어요. With more 속도. 어렸을 때 부모님한테 배웠어요. 저도 배우고 싶은데 무서워요. 저도 처음에 사실 울었어요. With extra 속도. 어렸을 때 부모님한테 배웠어요. 저도 배우고 싶은데 무서워요. 저도 처음에 사실 울었어요.